and you could send a battleship through those, but they nevertheless do indicate that the idea of change was not just change in general. People are looking for something very important that represents a different direction than either the Bushes or the Clinton direction. In order for us to respond to this moment, we have to be careful. John mentioned in the beginning about the Roosevelt era, and many people have talked about how we should look at the Roosevelt era and draw important lessons about how someone that's elected who is so can end up doing some marvelous things, and that's absolutely true. And it's interesting because Roosevelt, when he designed a New Deal, was modeling it after the corporate state of fascist Italy initially. And even with that modeling, the extreme right in the United States thought he was going too far, which was amazing. But what was it that pushed Roosevelt? It wasn't just the labor movement. It was that there was a left, and the left pushed the labor movement. So it's not just that there was that Roosevelt needed a new alliance, which he obviously did, but that there was a left. And the left wasn't just an abstraction. It wasn't just people talking. There were political organizations that were very well rooted, that were directly responsible for helping to move things. These were not lobbies. These were organizations that had roots in factories, in workplaces around the country, in communities, and were linked up with other social movements. This was a left that helped to bring together the vision and create a certain kind of narrative to which Roosevelt had to respond. We exist right now with a very weak left. I'm not one that argues we don't have one. I do think we have one, but it's very weak. And it will not get any stronger unless we pay attention to questions of organization. You know, that you don't get power based on magic and goodwill. And that relates to a second piece, which is that while left and progressive people were very involved in the Obama campaign, this was very different than, let's say, the Jackson campaigns of '84 and '88, where the left was actually quite central in both '84 and '88. In this campaign, what was interesting was that that there was a role for individual left and progressive people, but the folks at the top were clearly not of the left, and they would not, in my opinion, I would not argue that they were progressive. They're basically liberals. It's a different dynamic. And so it seems to me that we have to understand that while we may have a complicated alliance with these folks, they're not us, right? They're not the enemy, but they're not us. And that if we're going to see things happen, we're going to have to push. We're going to have to push really hard. Otherwise, we're going to be set up for a lot of disappointments. Also related to questions of organization and challenge is that there is now a grave danger, and I'm sorry to be putting a cloud over this, but I mean, like as I said before, the 24 hours have passed, right? Let's get real. No, I know, I hear you. There's a tendency that I'm already detecting to sort of mythologize the Obama campaign, and I'm not referring to anything that's been said on the panel. There's this myth that the Obama campaign was a campaign of volunteers, and I had to point out to somebody in an interview the other day, this is the most expensive campaign in U.S. history that had staff people, full-time paid staff people that helped to move this thing along. This was not a campaign, a spontaneous eruption of regular people who started getting to their computers and sending emails and putting up stuff, right? There was organization here. And I say that just so we not fall into illusions. If we're going to contest for power, we need organization. And that means dollars. It won't run on magic and goodwill, right? It means that we've got to build organization, and we've got to be prepared to go up against these folks. My final point, that while I think that Steve was absolutely right in terms of everything that he said, as always, the 46% that McCain gained was more than 55 million people, right? So we're not talking about, a 75-25 split, or we're not talking about there's a few thousand or even a million people running around who are nutcases, right? We're talking about 55 million people who, despite a profound economic crisis, despite 2 wars that are kicking the ass of the United States, destroying the economy, not to mention destroying the lives of the people of those countries, right? 55 million people were prepared to vote with their fears and vote based on irrationalism. Okay, this means that there is a base that's out there, a complicated base, but a base that we're going to have to pay attention to, and I don't mean simply from the standpoint of trying to win them over. What I mean is that we must expect what was once called revanchism, that is revenge. We must expect right-wing populism, right? We must expect that there's going to be a great deal of anger out there among a section of white people that we're going to have to deal with. And right-wing populism, along with left-wing populist approaches, thrive in periods of economic crisis. The strength of right-wing populism is that it more or less corresponds to the dominant narrative in this country. The dominant narrative being, if you work hard, parenthesis, and you're white, your lives and the lives of your children will be better than in the past. For white people around this country, they feel betrayed. And they're looking for who was their betrayer. Was it the Jew? In every every financial crisis, the right wing is always looking for the Jew. Every financial crisis. And they're looking now, right? Is it the immigrant? Is it the African American, right? Is it the gay and lesbian, right? Who is the source of this? Who is the betrayer of the American dream? We're going to have to build a counter politics that's prepared to go up against this and not assume that simply on the basis of a very significant victory we had on November 4th, that people are running around chasing their tails or that they're in complete dismay. Because I would put $1 to a donut that there's strategy sessions going on right now by the right to figure out how they rebuild, and rebuild in one of 2 ways where, and I think Krugman's right, there could very well be a split. There's the corporate right within the Republican Party, which could essentially collapse and move into the Democratic Party, which raises a whole series of interesting questions. And then you have the Palins, the right-wing populists, who may in fact end up becoming the hegemonic force within the Republican Party. The Republican Party contracts but becomes a voice of the extreme right. We have to be prepared for this, and it means organization. We should not fall prey, I know my time is up, we should not fall prey to the demobilization that happened in '92. We should not fall prey to what I saw in the labor movement where people said, our friend is in the White House, we can't challenge him, right? We've got to challenge because the other side already is. Thank you.